Welcome to the Numbers Game. I'm Cynthia Frelund, and this is our third Thanksgiving week episode for week 13. There are no byes this week, so even after 4 games on Thursday and Friday, there are still 12 left to break down through the lens of contextualized data, along with a few fun extra facts and stats to know. I love Thanksgiving, and I appreciate all of you and our growing Numbers Game community so much. Especially on holiday weeks, I appreciate you spending your time and energy here with me, so let's get right to it. My Week 12 model results were 10-3 straight up, 7 wins and 6 losses against the spread, and 8-5 on totals. That brings my season through 176 games to 67% straight up, 51.1 ATS, and 53.4 on totals. Let's come right out of the gate with a divisional rivalry in Cincinnati. The Steelers, who are coming off a divisional Week 12 loss on TNF in snowy Cleveland, have another AFC North away game. This time, they're 2.5-point dogs against the Bengals, and the total is 47 points. The advantage for the Steelers is on deep passes, those 20-plus air yarders, moonballs, if you will. Wilson has thrown a go on nearly 15% of his attempts this season, the second highest rate in the NFL. He also has the highest completion percentage over expected on them at 23%. And that number is not just for this season, but since Next Gen Stats started in 2016. He has the third highest EPA per deep pass since 2016 as well. The Bengals defense has allowed 7 deep touchdown passes this season. That is tied for the second most in the NFL. Joe Burrow is not the reason the Bengals record is what it is, but this matchup is strength on strength and something has got to give. No quarterback has a higher passer rating under pressure than Burrow's 99.5, and the Steelers have gotten pressure on opposing quarterbacks at the 8th highest rate. Burrow also has the 3rd best passer rating on downfield passes, along with 14 touchdowns, which is the second most. Pittsburgh's defense has allowed the lowest passer rating with 11 picks and just 4 touchdowns allowed on these 10-plus air yard attempts. Joe Burrow also paces the NFL with 2,411 passing yards and 20 passing touchdowns on non-blitzed downs. And of course, the Steelers' defense gets pressure at the 7th highest rate without blitzing. Bottom line, Pittsburgh's rushing potential against the Bengals puts them over the top 25-23. However, Pittsburgh winning only ranks 12th of 16 in confidence. Najee Harris has 590 rushing yards after contact. That is the 8th most. And the Bengals have allowed 3.5 yards after contact per carry, which is the 5th most. I have a lot of data that suggests that Lou Anarumo is one of, if not the top, at adapting his defensive attack at halftime. But there's also a reason that Russell Wilson leads the NFL with 10 yards per pass attempt and a 126.1 passer rating in the 4th quarter of games this season. Should my math hold, the Steelers can guarantee their 21st straight non-losing season in Week 13, which would tie the NFL record held by the Cowboys from 1965 to 1985. Speaking of the Cowboys, they shocked me and a lot of people, winning outright in our nation's capital as 10-point underdogs in Week 12. So let's go back to DC, where the Titans come to town this week. Commanders are 5.5-point favorites, and the total is 44.5 points. I think we need to give a little love to Tennessee quarterback Will Levis's evolution. He is now the first player since the 1970 merger to have a 105 or more passer rating in a 3-game span in which they were also sacked 20-plus times. Last week against the Texans, the Titans allowed a 51.4% pressure rate and a season-high 8 sacks. And by the way, they were only blitzed on 17.1% of their dropbacks. Their tackles, J.C. Latham and Nicholas Petit-Frere, have combined to allow 19 sacks, which is the most among any duo in the league. Despite 3 losses in a row, Commanders rookie Jaden Daniels still has a 68.4 completion percentage, which is the highest for a rookie in NFL history should it hold. Over the past 3 games, his passer rating has dropped significantly, though, from 106.7 in weeks 1 to 9 to 77.7. I know, we touched on the 5.5-point per game drop-off and nearly doubling of giveaways per game after week 9 trend that we've seen in past Cliff Kingsbury-led offenses, but I am still not ready to go there. I'm tracking it, though. I am definitely willing to say that running back injuries and playing more backups in these spots does increase the odds of turnovers and make it harder to score. I did see Jaden Daniels both rush for 74 yards last week and connect on a very deep pass for a touchdown with Terry McLaurin in a high leverage situation, which leads me to believe that his ribs are better, which is certainly a positive. Bottom line, Washington has two key advantages, one on each side of the ball. On defense, no quarterback has been sacked more on dropbacks where the quarterback holds onto the ball for 4 or more seconds than Will Levis, who's been brought down on 85% of them. The Commanders have also allowed the lowest success rate on these extended dropbacks. On offense, Tennessee has allowed 1.5 rushing yards over expected per quarterback carry this season. That's 9th most. And Jaden Daniels has scrambled at the 3rd highest rate on almost 1 in 5 of his dropbacks this season. He also earns 5.6 yards per carry on them. That is 6th most. Washington gets back in the W column in a closer than expected game, 24-21, and the Commanders winning ranks 6th of 16 in confidence. Tennessee not only kept it closer than expected last week, they outright beat their division rival Texans in Houston as 8.5-point underdogs. This week, Houston is on the road in Jacksonville as a 5-point favorite in a game where the total is only 43 points. Last week, the Texans committed 11 penalties. Again, this was their 4th game this season with at least 11 penalties. That is tied for the most such games in the NFL. They have 92 total penalties on the season, which ranks 2nd most. CJ Stroud now has 3 games with 2 or more interceptions, and Houston is 0-3 in those games. He also has the 2nd lowest passer rating since week 7. It is 74.7. Stroud has been pressured in under 2.5 seconds at the 3rd highest rate on more than 1 in 5 dropbacks. This is a situation, though, that becomes very boom or bust for the Texans, as in 27 of those have turned into sacks, the most quick sacks in the NFL. But he also has the 6th highest success rate when facing the quick pressure. Okay, that is kind of the bad news. But the good news is that the situation is much better this week. First, Stroud has 7 passing touchdowns with just 1 interception against man coverage. And the Jags, well, they use man at the 7th highest rate. Second, CJ Stroud has been great on intermediate passes. He has the 3rd most EPA per dropback. You know who has more? Only Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And the Jags defense has allowed the 9th highest completion percentage over expected on such passes, along with the 10th most yards per intermediate pass. My 2 notes for Jacksonville are that Josh Hines-Allen has had at least 5 pressures in 6 games so far this season, and he's coming off 2 games with 8 pressures in each. On offense, rookie wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. leads the Jags with 42 receptions, 689 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's top 5 among rookies in all 3 of those stats. He also has 311 yards off deep passes, which is 5th among rookies, but almost double the 187 combined for all of his teammates. Bottom line, Joe Mixon seems to be a very good proxy for the win-loss record of the Texans. And in this game, look for him to find success rushing when his quarterback lines up under center. CJ Stroud has lined up under center on more than 75% of Joe Mixon's rushes. That's the 5th most in the NFL. Mixon has earned 0.6 rushing yards over expected per carry from this alignment. That ranks 9th. And the Jags defense has allowed the 3rd most EPA per carry to under center rushes. Also, Danielle Hunter has 78 pressures this season, which is the most in the NFL by 20. Texans win 24-20, and Houston winning ranks 8th in confidence or exactly mid. Let's finish off the AFC South with the Colts, who travel to Foxborough to take on the Pats. They are 3-point road favorites. The total in this one is 42.5. Anthony Richardson and the Colts passing offense has a great opportunity in this matchup. Richardson has a 65% completion percentage against cover 2 this season. This is actually his only coverage faced where he has over a 60% completion percentage. He also averages his most yards per pass attempt. It also happens to be the most in the league, and has a 123.8 passer rating against this coverage, and that ranks 3rd. The Patriots use cover 2 at the 8th highest rate, and they've allowed the 5th most yards per pass attempt at 8.9. Drake May has the best rookie quarterback completion percentage when under pressure this season at 52%. And Indy's defense has allowed the 3rd highest completion percentage when under pressure at over 56. It is also mind-blowing that Drake May has thrown 10 touchdown passes to 10 different players. Bottom line, whoever can get and keep their run game effective wins. Jonathan Taylor has had some down weeks in terms of the production we've come to expect from a guy who's had 4 games with over 100 rushing yards this season. But this week is a plus spot for him. Taylor has the 7th highest rushing yards over expected per outside rush this season. It's 1.2. And New England has missed 53 tackles on outside rushes, and this is tied for the 5th most. Fun note here, the Patriots are 0-5 when Drake May has had 30 or more passing attempts in a start, and 2-0 when he's had fewer than 30. I have the Colts winning by 2 points, 21-19, and this ranks 11th of 16 in confidence. However, in my much more aggressive ATS-focused model, the Patriots win outright. Time for a list. This week, let's do all props because Thanksgiving week is all about eating and we need to eat. Okay, I'm going to stop now. That's just not funny. Here are 3 that I like from the games we've covered so far. Number 1, Anthony Richardson to have at least 1 passing touchdown. What? Did you not hear my cover 2 note from above? 1? That's low. He can connect against cover 2. Number 2, Joe Burrow to rush for more than 9.5 yards. Scrambles and avoiding pressures, yeah, they count for these numbers. And number 3, Drake May to pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns. Pressure does not bother this guy, and this prop does not include who they are caught by. Let's go from Gillette to MetLife, where the Jets are hosting the Seahawks. Seattle is a 2.5-point favorite in a game where 41.5 points is the total. Geno Smith leads the NFL with 275.9 passing yards per game this season, and Seattle is one of just 2 teams with multiple wide receivers to each have at least 650 receiving yards this season. Jackson Smith-Njigba has led the team in receiving in each of the last 4 games. One place where the Seahawks offense has an edge is when not using play action. Smith uses play action at the lowest rate in the league and has the 7th highest yard per pass average on plays not using play action. It's 7.5 yards. Aaron Rodgers has been pressured on about a quarter of his dropbacks this season. In fact, he's been pressured at the 3rd lowest rate. Seattle has the 7th highest defensive pressure rate, and by the way, it's about 38%. Interesting note here that 21 of their 28 sacks have come in their 6 wins, but they only have 7 total sacks in their 5 losses. Bottom line, I have Seattle winning, but only by 1 point. 22-21. And this game ranks 15th of 16 or quite uncertain in terms of confidence. Seattle's defense has allowed only 11.5 points per game since their Week 10 bye. That's the 3rd lowest in the league. One area that's a big deal in terms of deciding the outcome in this one is the Jets' ability to generate pressure coming off the edge. On the season, they rank 6th best in this metric. Next Gen Stats shows that Seattle's tackles have allowed the 2nd highest rate of pressure coming off the edge. However, Abraham Lucas, their right tackle, returned in Week 11 and fared well against the Niners, but was less effective against the Cardinals. AKA, you can start to see why this one is so close. Speaking of the Cardinals, let's move on to Minnesota, where Arizona will be playing the Vikings. The home team is a 3.5-point favorite, and the total is 45 points in this one. If styles make fights, this one is a tough fight for the Cardinals. However, I need to point out 2 bright spots here. Number 1, Trey McBride is coming off a career day last week against Seattle, hauling in 12 of 15 for 133 yards, and 76 of those coming after the catch. He now leads all tight ends with 465 yards on open targets. Also, James Conner is tied with Derrick Henry for the most forced missed tackles at 71. Okay, now the matchup notes. Kyler Murray has the 4th lowest passer rating against the blitz and the 7th fewest EPA per dropback. The Vikings blitz at the 2nd highest rate, about 38%. Okay, but let's go deeper because we know not all blitzes are the same. And it feels like the strategy would dictate to blitz a mobile quarterback like Kyler Murray at your own peril. But the numbers show that it is not working out like that. Murray's passer rating when not blitzed is 4th best, and the drop-off is nearly 26 points. As for the situation Sam Darnold finds himself in, Arizona's defense pressures opponents at the 3rd lowest rate, is under 30%, and he's averaged the 3rd most yards per attempt when not under pressure. It's at 9. On play-action passes, Sam Darnold has used them at the 8th highest rate, but earned the most yards per play at nearly 12 and has the highest success rate on them. By the way, the Cardinals' defense has allowed the 2nd highest success rate to play-action passes. Bottom line, Vikings win 24-19, and Minnesota winning ranks 6th in confidence. My math says the Vikings have too many weapons on offense for Arizona's defense. Justin Jefferson has the 2nd most receiving yards in the league. Jordan Addison is coming off a career day where he had 162 yards. TJ Hawkinson had his first game over the century mark last week, and Aaron Jones is one of just 5 players with both at least 750 rushing yards and at least 250 receiving yards this season. The last Sunday morning 1 p.m. Eastern matchup is the Chargers at Falcons. Bolts are 1.5-point favorites on the road, and the total is 48 points. Do you know who the only quarterback to have not thrown an interception from a clean pocket is? Justin Herbert, good guess. He also has the 7th most yards per pass without pressure and the 10th most EPA per dropback when kept clean. Atlanta's defense has really struggled to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks to the tune of the fewest sacks, they just have 10 total, and the 4th lowest pressure rate by any defense since 2018. They've allowed a league-high 71.6 completion percentage and at least 240 passing yards in 4 straight games before their bye. One more note, the Chargers have used play action at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL on almost 1/3 of their dropbacks, and the Falcons have surrendered a 104.4 passer rating when facing play action that is 9th highest. Falcons' second-year back Bijan Robinson ranks 5th in the NFL with 1,142 scrimmage yards, and he's one of just 2 players to have at least 750 rush and 300 receiving yards this season. He and his fellow running back Tyler Algier have combined to force 76 missed tackles. That is the 4th best among running back duos. They also have a combined 874 yards after contact, which is the 5th most among running back duos. The Chargers have allowed just 5 rushing touchdowns, which is tied for the fewest, and 2 of them came in Week 12. And it's not the smartest strategy to think that Derrick Henry rushing strategies are translatable to even very good other backs. In other words, this could be a tough game for the Falcons' ground game, despite how well they played this season as a whole. Bottom line, the Chargers get the cross-country early time zone win, 24-22. LA winning ranks 10th of 16 in confidence. Smart, effective, turnover-free offensive play solidifies the math. For example, Justin Herbert leads the NFL with a 13-1 touchdown to interception ratio this season, and the Falcons defense hasn't caused a turnover in 3 games. Prop list number 2 is the top-end touchdown scorers. 5 big names who forecast for big games and a trip or so to the end zone. Number 1, Jamar Chase. Can the Bengals just pay the man already, please? Did you miss his 4th down touchdown against the Chargers last week? From now on, we call the Bengals offense Uno time. It's a thing. I'll explain some other time. Anyways, his price tag is outpacing inflation for sure. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. It's been a minute since he scored, but he gets there in 59% of my simulations. Number 3, Joe Mixon. Look for fewer penalties and a greater focus on ball control this week. Number 4, DK Metcalf against the Jets. This is completely unrelated to football, but did you know he is an excellent investor? That is a fun fact to know and tell your friends when he ends up in the end zone. And number 5, Mike Evans. You know the stats on Baker to Evans. Mayfield earns an extra yard per attempt with Evans on the field, and Evans is deep in pursuit of another 1,000-yard season. Which brings us to his matchup in Carolina. The Panthers host the Bucs, who come to town as 6-point road favorites in a game where 46.5 points is the total. Improvements to the run game was something I think we heard Todd Bowles mention in every presser last season and all of the early ones this season. But we finally made it to where that is an advantage stat for the Bucs. Bucky Irvin has the 2nd highest success rate on outside rushes this season, and he's forced a missed tackle on these outside runs at the highest rate by any running back since at least 2018, when we first were able to track this stat. Matchup-wise here, Carolina has allowed the 2nd highest success rate and the 2nd most explosive runs with 26 on outside rushing attempts. Dave Canales has been preaching improvement and growth every single week, and that too is really starting to happen. The Panthers defense got a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes to the tune of 5 sacks. They only had 12 total sacks on the season prior to last week. But even more of a green flag is Bryce Young's growth since becoming the starter again. Young has 5 touchdowns and an 83.5 passer rating over the last 4 starts after 0 touchdowns and a 44.1 rating in his first 2 starts of the season. He also had his career best completion percentage over expected against a very tough Chiefs defense and led a game-tying touchdown drive with less than 2 minutes remaining. Bottom line, the Panthers' progress is great, but the Bucs take this one 27-19. This ranks 5th in confidence. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the Black Friday episode, go check out the deals I point out at the end of that one. I talk about the discount you can get on the Bucs to win the NFC South, which may only be available for a limited time. Rounding out the NFC South, the Saints host the Rams in New Orleans. The visitors are 3-point favorites in a game where the total is 48.5 points. Matthew Stafford has used play action at the 7th highest rate this season to the tune of the 2nd highest success rate. New Orleans has allowed the 5th most yards per play action pass at 9.8 per. And despite a seemingly reinvigorated team under interim head coach Darren Rizzi, the missed tackle problem in the passing game has not been solved. And of course, Even though he's missed some time with injuries, it's worth a reminder that Marshawn Lattimore is not walking through that door after being traded to Washington. And Matthew Stafford is not going to throw it into Tyrann Mathieu's coverage. That is a trend that others have observed as well, given that he's only seen the fourth lowest target rate this season among safeties at 4.5%. If you're a Saints fan, you have to be pretty happy about your first-round pick from this year's draft, left tackle Taliese Fuaga, who's allowed just a 7.4 pressure rate, the lowest of any rookie tackle this season. So far in my draft prep for 2025, it is a light class for offensive linemen with top-end projections, so acquiring him this year was even more helpful to a team with some cap concerns. This week will be a big test, though, as he will likely see a lot of another rookie, Jared Verse, who paces rookie pass rushers with 51 pressures, which are only fewer through 12 weeks than Nick Bosa's rookie campaign in 2019. He had 55. Bottom line, even though the Saints have won each of their last 4 regular season games played against the Rams in New Orleans, LA reverses the trend 24-23. This ranks 13th in confidence of the 16 games. Between the Rams' league-leading defensive pressure rate and the fact that Kyren Williams has forced 50 missed tackles, which is tied for the 6th most, he gets to also face a Saints defense that has missed tackles in the run game to the tune of the 5th highest rate. The Rams both limit their downside and protect their upside. Let's simplify this. Kupp plus Nacua plus Williams against a defense that is bottom 3 in total and passing yards per game allowed has a higher probability of success than Kamara plus Taysom plus MVS against a Rams defense that can get got in the downfield passing game, but has a stronger defensive front. Is this next one the best game of the whole day? It certainly is the one I spent the most time on, as two teams who just won on the road at SoFi Stadium a day apart square off. The Eagles head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens in a game where both quarterbacks and running backs have top-end arguments to be on the short list, not just for Offensive Player of the Year awards, but for MVP accolades. Ravens are field goal favorites, and the total is 51 points. Let's do this one with quick hitters for each of these top-end players because the matchup is so good. Jalen Hurts has recorded career highs in completion percentage, passer rating, and yards per pass attempt when he's had a time to throw of over 2.5 seconds this season. Baltimore's defense is boom or bust against this, as they have the 3rd most sacks in the league with 39 and the most hits with 89, but they've also allowed the 3rd most passing touchdowns at 22 and the 7th most yards per attempt on passes faced when quarterbacks have had 2.5 or more seconds to throw. They've also only generated a quick pressure at the 3rd lowest rate in the league. Saquon Barkley has averaged 89.4 rushing and 128.5 scrimmage yards per game against top 5 rush defenses in his career. And of course, Baltimore has the 2nd best run defense. Barkley is setting career marks in a lot of places, but he's getting a little help from his O-line this year, especially when rushing from under center, where he's been afforded 2.6 yards before contact per carry. He's never gotten more than 1.7 in the past. However, the Ravens are 3rd best at defending designed runs from under center. Lamar Jackson is setting career highs and leads the NFL in yards per pass and passer rating on attempts from the pocket this season. However, the Eagles have allowed the fewest yards per pass and lowest completion percentage over expected on passes from the pocket. Derrick Henry has the most rushing yards, 486, and a career-high 5.8 yard per carry average on rushes against loaded boxes this season. The Ravens see a loaded box at the 4th highest rate, and they don't really care because they run the most against them. That is what happens when you have Derrick Henry. However, the Eagles have only utilized a loaded box at the 7th lowest rate. And with the force that is Jalen Carter, the opportunity to run in general is decreased. Since those are strength on strength, let's look at where each team has an advantage over the other. Advantage Eagles on downfield passes. Jalen Hurts has averaged the 3rd most yards per attempt on them this season, and he has a league-high completion percentage and completion percentage over expected. The Ravens defense has allowed a league-high 156 yards per game on downfield pass attempts this season, and the 6th highest completion percentage over expected. Advantage Ravens on intermediate passes. Lamar Jackson has targeted this area of the field at the 9th highest rate and leads the NFL in passer rating, EPA per pass, and success rate on these 10 to 19 air yard throws. The area of the defense the Eagles have been most vulnerable to? Intermediate passes, where they allow their highest EPA per attempt at 0.3 expected points per throw. Bottom line, in my regular model, the Ravens win by 1 point, 25-24. In my ATS model, the Eagles full-on pull off the upset, The Eagles losing Brandon Graham for the season is a big deal to their pass rush, especially to a defense that has only allowed 14.7 points per game since week 6, which is the second fewest in the NFL. Now, if Devontae Smith returns, let's just say that makes my ATS pick even stronger as he leads the team with 41 receptions and is tied for the league with 4 receiving touchdowns. Baltimore winning at home ranks only 14th of the 16 games this week, so quite uncertain. It's weekly wildcard time. You know the drill. These are not the top scorers at their position. They weren't early round fantasy football picks, but this week they have elevated end zone reaching odds. Number 1, Chase Brown. I know it's Pittsburgh and they are great against the run, but we gotta give it up for the offensive line improvements by the Bengals and Brown's ability to reach his top speed fast to find advantages. Number 2, Chuba Hubbard against the Bucs. Always weird to pick a running back against Todd Bowles, but here we are. Number 3, T. Higgins. Joe Burrow forecast to throw a bunch in this one, and I have touchdowns for both Chase and Higgins in 55% of simulations. Number 4, Nick Westbrook-Akina against the Commanders. He has seen the end zone in 6 of the last 7 games, and those 6 touchdowns are tied for the 3rd most in the NFL over that span. And number 5, Courtland Sutton, whose game we haven't covered yet because it's Monday Night Football, but wait till you hear the go ball stat on him and Bo Nix. The Sunday night matchup in Orchard Park is the last NFC-AFC matchup of the week when the Niners face the Bills. The home team is a touchdown favorite and the line is set to 45 points. I was first alerted to this via X and then verified it with the Next Gen Stats, but Christian McCaffrey's top speed this season so far is 16.38 miles per hour, which is slower than every top game speed from last season except the calf strain game where he only played 38 snaps. His average top speed from last season was 18.4 miles per hour, and this season it is 16.1. Okay, we need some positivity in here. Brock Purdy, who should be back, has averaged a league high in yards per attempt and completion percentage over expected against cloud coverage, which means cover 2 zone or cover 6. In fact, his passer rating against it is the best in the NFL since at least 2018. That is as far back as this stat goes. The Bills use this coverage at the 2nd highest rate, but they've allowed the 6th fewest yards per attempt when using it. One of Buffalo's advantages lies in red zone rushing on both sides of the ball. The Bills' offense has the 4th most EPA per red zone rush this season, and the Niners have allowed a red zone touchdown at the 4th highest rate. It's about 68%, which is the Niners' worst since 2000. Buffalo's defense has allowed the 2nd lowest rushing success rate in the red area this season, and the Niners are average, as in they rank 16th in rushing success rate in the red zone. However, that is their lowest success rate since 2020. When Josh Allen and James Cook face a stacked box, they also have the edge in this one. Buffalo has used at least 6 O-linemen at the highest rate in the league, in part because they've seen a stacked box at the 5th highest rate. Their strategies against stacked boxes have worked to the tune of the 2nd highest success rate. And the Niners defense has allowed the 6th highest success rate to rushes when they've used a stacked box. Bottom line, Bills do what they need to do in order to try to secure the number 1 seed, winning 28-20, and Buffalo winning ranks 3rd of the 16 games this week in confidence. Week 13 concludes in Denver, where the Browns come to town to try to keep Bo Nix from earning his 6th game with 2 or more passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Broncos are 5.5-point favorites, and the total is 42. Jameis Winston is a great interview, and he's also had great results against man blitzes this season, completing 12 of 18 for 148 yards and a touchdown against them. The Broncos use man blitzes at the highest rate in the league and have allowed more than 69% of such attempts to be caught, along with 8 touchdowns with only 1 interception when using man blitzes. Bo Nix has targeted Courtland Sutton on 8 go routes since week 5, and the results? 7 completions, which is tied for the most in that span, for 158 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is also tied for the most. The Browns have allowed 5 receiving touchdowns on deep passes since week 5. That is tied for the 2nd most over that span. Cleveland has also allowed a 113.4 passer rating on deep passes since week 5. That is the 8th most generous. Bottom line, Denver wins by a touchdown, 24-17, and the Broncos winning ranks 4th of the 16 games in confidence. One thing to note here is that Jameis has been great against the blitzes he's faced this season, with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. I'm using the term blitzes he's faced this season on purpose because some teams use the blitz to manufacture pressure, and others do it because they can really trust their secondary, and the Broncos with Pat Surtain and company fall into the trust category. And to finish this whole week off, let's do one more food-themed set of picks. It is time for our spicy and bland menu. Bland first, remember, these are props that happen in at least 55% of my simulations. Number 1, Nico Collins to score a touchdown. Since at the time I am filming this, we do not know who is playing quarterback for the Jags yet, the props aren't fully out yet. I was hoping to do a yardage or reception number here, but they aren't out, so let's just go with a trip to the end zone. Number 2, Will Dissly to catch more than 3.5 passes. That number is low. We did a whole thing on him last week, and it panned out. He's also been one of the reasons that Justin Herbert has been so effective and efficient. And number 3, I'm going for it, the Bo Nix to continue his streak of throwing at least 1.5, meaning at least 2 passing touchdowns against the Browns. On to the spicies. These happen in at least 48% of simulations with enough volatility to make the juice worth the squeeze. Remember, normal spice levels are 2 blands and 1 spicy. My preferred recipe is 2 spicy and 1 bland. Spicy number 1, Alvin Kamara to return to the end zone for the first time in 5 games against the Rams. Number 2, Kenneth Walker to score 6. His yardage numbers are not as hefty this season, but his red zone usage is still there. And number 3, in that same game, Breece Hall to also score 6. Now, I have this as more likely to be a receiving touchdown, but it doesn't matter. It is just a trip to the end zone. Now, that is what I call a full week. Thank you for spending some Thanksgiving weekend time with me. I appreciate it so much. Projections, scores, and more are ready for you to use as you wish as of Wednesday the 27th. And remember, they update when the injury reports come out and when news happens. And if you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, and pass it along so we can continue to grow.